The ALGS Pro tier list. That's what you've got right here, meaning the best players in the world have decided based on their actions, these are the most valuable legends in season 25. So if you've seen another tier list from another content creator, that's great. And they probably have some really good ideas, especially if they're talking ranked, they're talking casuals. I've made plenty that have kind of split that line. But what I like to do, because I'm privileged enough to host and cast the ALGS. Many of you know me from that. Many of you know me from my YouTube channel or on Twitch. The thing that I get to do is talk about what's at the highest level. And many of my videos are often trying to give you guys information that isn't the information you would get normally in each and every game you'd play, or just maybe from the people at your level. It's to get information on, yes, what you might think of the character, but how the character is being utilized in the higher levels of play. So you can have something to aim to understand where the highest value is gotten from this character and why they are prioritized at that level. It's a little bit like, hey, I just throw my money into a savings account and talking about it like, hey, here's a different type of plan so that you can actually invest your money into something that's going to 10x the return rather than a standard, just keeping your money and not getting anything from it in your bank, which happens to a lot of us. That's the way you start. But hopefully, this gives you guys a little bit of a wider breadth of view. I want to get started too with some of the characters we're not seeing and then move into the characters that are the most meta towards the end of this tier list. Now, those who want to know how this works, the S is the characters that have to be played, that they are the meta. And also, you see F as characters to me that are just not being touched, not being played. There's only a few that really fall into that category. Most of the characters fall in between A and C. There might be a D and an E here, but mostly there will be an A and C, and there might be an F, which means we need some changes. Otherwise, this character is not going to get played. S means maybe they need a nerf. Otherwise, it's kind of a must play in this current meta. So let's start off with, I think Caustic. Caustic is a really good character to kind of set the tone for where we're at. Caustic is kind of in the C territory here, C or D most likely. And because he's such a formidable character in his history, Caustic, it's very hard to kind of put him much lower than a C, because if he gets into the end zone, he's so effective. But to be fair, he's one of the least most played characters, the least played character in all of the ALGS right now. And I'm just not excited about kind of ranking him high enough for you guys to have a feeling that this is representative of what anyone's considering using. So for that, we're going to leave him at C. As I continue to rank these, he could drop down a little bit to D, but he's right on the borderline of that. Caustic is a great character, like I said, in zone, but right now the priority in high level play, and I think in most of the game, is being able to move, have resources that are flexible, and get information quickly. Caustic is kind of stuck in the old meta of being able to hold down a location and do it in a way where people are kind of forced to navigate that situation in like one way, right? Pre-alter, pre a lot of these other characters. And you're gonna have to get gassed, right? When that Caustic ultimate comes out, you're gonna be in trouble. He just doesn't have a lot of situations like that. Yes, E District, yes, Broken Moon, change things, different landscapes, people getting used to it. Can Caustic come back? Sure. I mean, the right meta, the right buff. But Caustic is usually either irrelevant or a must pick. Currently, he is irrelevant. Going into Loba, Loba for me is a character that is a weird one. She would be in B in terms of my skill, but when we're seeing her played, she's played just as much as Caustic, which is basically not at all. In fact, if you talk about her actual play rate over the season, it would probably be less than Caustic, because I think we saw a Caustic or two in this last lobby in the regional finals. Loba to me has a great kit. She's a character that will excel as an individual. If you're solo queuing, I think she brings a lot to a team. Her black market boutique, her ultimate is always just something valuable to have. And I think for consistency's sake, was more valuable in the past than it is now, because we have arsenals that allow you to land, grab the weapon you want, upgrade it right away. That's what Loba's ultimate essentially does. And now you're really just getting a couple of those attachments. Yes, it can help with the devotion, how strong that is in this meta. Yes, it can help getting those purple barrels, those things that are kind of hard to track unless your teammates are helping you. Usually they're not, they're taking them from you. But Loba just has had too many things in her nature, in her past, that have been fundamentally the word I would use is a non-reliable, unreliable, really. The bracelet, her burglar's best friend. It's such a great ability idea, but it's been wonky. It's not been reliable enough for a lot of players to trust it. And in that regard, you have to look at, if this is a character that I'm going to play around, well, how am I going to utilize her? I still think in World's Edge, and I still think in certain maps, and again, this is leaning more towards where there's a meta, where there's Caustics, where there's Gibbies, where there are people who, like the fact that they like to hold up a zone and you need to pressure them. Even though there are shields, you want grenades, you want nades, you want arc stars. Loba can be an incredible difference maker in a zone with 4 teams sitting there, and you've got a black market boutique. So you're the one who has shield batteries. You're the one who has 2, 3 more nades. You're the one that has, it's not running out of ammo, and you're holding height. And if this zone keeps keeping you in, you're going to have another one in just a few seconds. So that to me is a real big benefit. People have just steered away from this meta, and it's been much more of a focus on a few supports that have been valuable and can hold space at a greater level. That's one of the things you're just seeing a lot of maps right now play that holding space is difficult for a lot of characters, and Loba doesn't really allow you to do that. Caustic also, without shields, more of an offensive zoner, and not really in the defensive capacity. Seer, here's a weird thing about Seer. Seer's actually going down to the D category for me, because this is a character that fills a role that clearly no one trusts him to fill. Seer is, again, very much like Caustic, but I have not seen one Seer played in North America or EMEA over these past match day weeks, over this entire split one. It's been a drought for my main man. And I like Seer a lot. He's one of my favorite legends to play when he's valuable. But the thing that kind of teeters and totters his effectiveness or ineffectiveness is his ability to hit people with his Q, to have his focus of attention land and be dangerous as it's silencing, as it's finding information. There was a recent buff to Seer at that point a few weeks ago to decrease the time that you can before the focus of attention hits an enemy, so it's easier to land, essentially meaning shows up, then it hits you faster than showing up. You have time to move out of the way, and then it goes and activates. His ultimate, though, was such a big game changer, and the fact that Exhibit is really just kind of the, I guess, least relevant form of finding out where players are right now, especially with the introduction of Sparrow, our newest legend. Seer's just not really on people's minds. I'm a little surprised about that. Maybe the buff will shift him towards a different direction, guys, but let me know what you feel about Seer particularly. And while you're doing that, by the way, in the comment section where I'll be chatting with a lot of you guys, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video if you enjoy breaking down the conversations around these legends, because I think it is interesting. And it'll definitely help you steer you towards the right way. And at the end, I think I'll give you you probably know, but the composition that you need to kind of be playing right now, especially in ranked or high level play. Bloodhound. Bloodhound's in the same position as Seer, and the reason I'm ranking them down is because these characters, very much like Caustic and Loba, are, and more Caustic, not Loba, are either in and the characters to play, or they're nerfed enough to where they're not viable. And while these are still good characters, when it comes to the meta prioritization, this does not mean they're bad. This just means that who's getting picked up in what order. And you're more likely to see Caustic or Loba grabbed in as a third to help with a strategy that you've got than leaning on the Bloodhound and leaning on the Seer. And there's a reason for it. These characters had years or 8+ months of being the Recon legends that are the most effective in the game. And now they've just been nerfed enough to where that's no longer a big deal. Whether their perks have been changed to not give them as much for their perks, for the value, and whether their ultimates or their tacticals have been nerfed back into, the relative nature. Sometimes this is just like, hey, that was a good investment. Going back to the money thing, everyone's hyping up Nvidia. They're hyping up Tesla. There's that moment where it's climbing, and then it kind of stabilizes. And then maybe it falls down a little bit. And then you're kind of like, this isn't the moment to get hype about that anymore. You know what I mean? And I think now, particularly, we're seeing that with some of the recons, because there's just a few characters who fit that recon bill so much better in this new landscape. And again, what is it giving you? How are you filling that role? And how are you building a team out? Bloodhound tends to be a team that is very, very aggressive. And if you're going to get aggressive, that's fine, but there are better options. And if you're not going to get aggressive, then Bloodhound doesn't really help you fill in that role, which is why they're not seeing a lot of play. Now, another character here, which I would say is C, and I could even put him into B, but I would probably put him a little bit higher if I saw him more often. I did see him played by one player this weekend in EMEA, and that was Zane on FaZe Clan, is Revenant. Skirmishers, and this is the first skirmisher that I've talked about here, have had a buff and a nerf. One of the best things about their buff was, I think, having that kind of savior speed passive that Conduit has, where she can run faster to her teammates. When you have a skirmisher on your team, you can run faster than them, and it allows the pace of the game to get picked up. But one of the things that they added and then took away was the fact that when you are aggressive towards a skirmisher and then you get a knock, or you are a skirmisher and aggressive, you get a knock, you can reset your tactical. Revenant's the kind of character that really inspires a lot of play. Now, they've changed passives, they've changed the tacticals and the perks for the tactical, being able to reset your jump faster or just jump faster, right? And have it basically be like, okay, so instead of holding it and waiting 2 seconds in order to get the full max length jump, you can hold it for 0.2 seconds and get that full max length jump. But those jumps lose so much value when you know you're going in, getting that knock, and you don't have the ability to get out. That's what made Revenant exciting. That immediate nerf probably steered us away from what could have become a potential Revenant meta. But right now, he just doesn't bring the same value as other skirmishers, and he's just not at the top of the class. He is a character that I think, if you have some niche experience on him, can do well in the later rounds. And we saw that as well. FaZe won the game that they played Revenant, and they almost won the game that they played him again. So one of the things I like about it is that in the ALGS, because we have legend bans, so the most played legend is banned in that game, and so the next game you cannot use them. So, you know, characters like, we talked about Sparrow, we talked about Alter, we talked about, you know, we haven't talked about Ash yet, but characters that are kind of prioritized, they're out. So when you start getting down the list, Revenant becomes, you know, an opportunity for a player who could play him, but not many players have them in their back pocket right now, especially with all the changes that have happened to the TAC. But it's an interesting idea. Okay, let's move over to Rampart. Rampart, to me, is in a B situation. Obviously, she is one of those controllers that has access to a major kind of resource in this game, and that is defensive capabilities. And the fact that she's able to not only, you know, kind of carry on in this role of being a character that has offense and defense, she's got this flexible nature to her. After many, many buffs, many, many years of being kind of underwhelming, Rampart still fits that role of like a third that gives you some defense, but also gives you that Sheila, that ultimate. Her passive seems to be a little irrelevant in terms of the value that it gets consistently across the split. So that's never really the difference maker, and, you know, utilizing LMGs and getting more value out of them. But it's really the ultimate and really the walls that really can make these zones that, say you're running into a 7th and 8th game and you're on E District, you're on Broken Moon, you don't know where the zone is going to be. It's not like Storm Point, and it's not necessarily like World's Edge, where we have a little bit more consistency. Rampart can give you the flexibility to know, okay, we might not have a building, we might have the top of a ridge, we might have the side of a bridge. That rhymed. I didn't mean for it to rhyme, but at the end of the day, that's kind of E District. We at least can have walls and be flexible with how we approach this fight. And we'll have a lot of, you know, door breaking potential with the Sheila against Catalyst that, you know, most likely will be banned, but if they're not, we'll be able to kind of run through a lot of enemies' defenses. There's some value there that I think Rampart's just kind of a consistent character. Shout out to Anjali as well, her voice actress, who is such a great person. I always see her at events, and I interviewed her before on the channel. If you want to check out that interview, actually just type it in. It was a great video. It was a great sponsorship when Rampart was first released. All right, Octane. Octane is in, to me right now, Octane is one of the F characters. Now, Octane is not an F character. Octane's a fun character, but if Octane doesn't see something changed about this character, they're just not going to get picked. They're not going to get utilized in high-level play. That's just the way that it is. This is where you have to decide. Do I care that a character is in high-level play? Does that signify some health in some way of a character? Many games have characters that are just not possibly played in high level, except for the most niche of opportunities. And that's usually a MOBA where you have like 275 characters to choose from. And there's this one counter pick that no one ever plays, but against the composition after the picks and bans, it's the perfect pick to counter whatever they decided to do to you. In Apex Legends, you're just picking your three best options and having hopefully a game plan with how you want to do it. You don't really want to go, oh, let's be defensive, half offensive. Let's be kind of like a middle of the pack, not sure what we're doing, can't really hold, can't really team fight, but are kind of okay at all of those. You want a decision, you want an identity. Hey, we're going to be aggressive. Hey, we're going to be very mobile. Hey, we're going to have the best mobile character, the best defensive character, and the best like poke pressure character, right? That's what you want in Apex. You're not counter picking in the same way. Many times you're just picking what's the best available. And Octane just doesn't fill it. I mean, we'd have to go 15 games probably to see this character. And the rotation ability of the jump pad, the stem, it's just not enough value to the team. And unfortunately, the jump pad's just not high enough and I don't know, effective enough to really create rotational movement that matters, especially when you have things like tridents, you have things like zip rails in Broken Moon. A lot of maps have been made now to have ways to get around that just Octane, on Kings Canyon, sure, but that's not what we're really playing on anymore. So that's where Octane is falling into there. If you guys have any ideas on how to make this character have some value towards high level, let me know in the comments. Or, if you don't think it's important, which I tend to think not every character needs to be in high level play. That is my opinion. I like it when they can be. I like changing up metas if they're too stale. So I wouldn't mind shifts. Like, okay, let's say next time, it's Vantage, Octane, and Conduit. That's the meta. Like that would be cool for, you know what I mean? Like a split. But it doesn't need to happen. So I'm not forcing it. That's where Octane lies. Horizon was played, and she's going to go for me and C. I think this is, in terms of pick rate, this is where she is. In terms of identity and belief system from the ALGS, this is where she is. In terms of my thought process and theory crafting, I think she could be in B. I think this is a character that has upward mobility in this meta because when you talk about movement and you look at different characters that can give you movement, you look at Octane, you look at Valkyrie in the ultimate, right? But let's say, you're not going to ult every time. You can't really do anything with her. You look at individual movement with Bangalore, right? She's got some. You look at Conduit, she's got a little bit as well. You look at team movement. Well, you got Pathfinder, you got Wraith, okay? And you've got Ash, and you've got Ballistic, and you've got Alter. Those are characters that can move your team. Octane is in that mix as well. But when you consider other characters outside of it, and you start getting deeper past those maybe top 4, top 5 picks, well, Horizon shows up because she can move your team vertically as a unit very consistently. She also has a game-changing ultimate if you can land it and if you are playing aggressive off of it. With the lack of aggressive metas and the way that it's been aggressive, where maybe it's been more about movement and survival opportunities, she can't compete with the top 3. That's true. She cannot compete with just the mix of value the top 3 provide. The gravity lift only gets you so many places, right? And you're kind of a sitting duck as well. So let's remember, in a meta where 30-30s, snipers, scouts are good, it's going to be really hard to trust going up in a gravity lift and not getting beamed out of the air, especially with controller players, especially with things like you not being able to return fire as well. Things that have been constantly changed with Horizon, so you have less accuracy while you're going up on your own gravity lift. You can't stay at the top the same way in length of time as you can. You probably only get one shield battery off, if that. The benefits of using her are sometimes forgotten, and she's not a character that's overly complicated. She's got the big gravity bomb, she's got a gravity lift, and she doesn't get slowed when she's falling with her passive. I mean, that's basically it. But she's a great character when people decide they want to play her. So I still think she has some upward mobility, but she's still in a C right now. She was played yesterday, but, not really in a position to do too much. A character that I think is going to be in, okay, this is probably a little risky. It's probably more likely that she would be in B, but here's the reason why. I think Valkyrie is a character that when you get into the way that this meta is played, a lot of characters who are kind of the staple of how you're utilizing your game plan as a team have some big time movement abilities that can help you navigate situations that are clustered in maps that are sometimes just really confusing in terms of, okay, wow, well, it pulled that way. We're in a building, there's 17 squads next to us, and we somehow have to make it over there quickly before them. How do we do that? Valkyrie is one of the best characters in the game if evac towers don't exist. But evac towers do exist. Now, can you counter an evac tower? Yes. But can you also counter Valkyrie? Yes. Does Valkyrie get countered by the same thing as an evac tower? Kind of. Because if you have really good damage, if you have really good ranged weapons, Valkyrie going up into the air is difficult as well. I mean, you can't expect a Gibby bubble into a Valkyrie because that character's not being played as much either, so that you can have a safe, skyward dive. It's just not where we're at currently in the meta with the options that we've been given. That I think have made Apex more fun, to be fair. But if those things didn't exist, I think Valkyrie's in a great spot. And the only thing I'm trying to think is, as these legend bans go on, does she deserve to jump a couple of spots? Because people tend to go less movement and more maybe aggressiveness, or maybe more defensiveness, maybe more like, let's split the difference and go a little wild. Let's throw some Mad Maggie in there. Let's throw a Mirage. But does Valkyrie really like not do more than those characters? Like, I feel like a good skyward dive can win you the game. I mean, we've seen it win games before. When you talk about TSM, Hal coming down from the heavens, the call to go from the rock that they were at, skyward dive, and go to, I think, the top or the other rock, whatever it is, that rotation with Valkyrie, that was the reason they won. And they look back at that play and they say it. So I still think that there's power there. I'm not sure it's being utilized. For me, that's her value. If it's in terms of how many times she's getting played, she does get played more than Horizon, Revenant, Caustic, and Loba, but she doesn't get played very often. Let's put it that way. Lifeline, also a character that we kind of saw. I think Lifeline actually is in a decent spot. I like characters that have that utility, and she plays a very clear role. She's a support role. She's much easier in terms of, getting her teammates back up into the fight. She's no Newcastle, but she has the Halo, which creates a difficult fighting scenario for a lot of players to deal with. She makes you decide something, and it's either deal with me or deal with my teammate. Oftentimes, though, I feel like Lifeline doesn't stabilize well enough, whereas Newcastle is really good at stabilizing, throwing that shield up, throwing the castle wall up, reviving with a shield, and moving really hard. There's a lot of things Newcastle can do to kind of like stop your push and be like, oh, damn it, I can't keep going. I get like, if I push past that, I'm really gonna be like committed, right? Where Lifeline, yes, she's rezzing. Yes, she might throw that Halo, but you could just walk up, do that little jump back and forth. It's like she doesn't have that same stabilization power and presence, which is why it's a different type of support. Her movement, too, by being able to hold her DOC, her Drone of Compassion, has that made a difference? I mean, I'm sure as a Lifeline player, you probably know. Let me know your thoughts, Lifeline players. Where do you think she's at? We saw her played quite a bit yesterday in one of the rounds. She became, I think, around 8 or 9, one of those picks that was kind of very prevalent in the lobby. But you're not going to see her before that, and she's just lost a lot of that panache. There was a split where Aurora was using her to rush getting their purple shields and red shields and getting the care package. It was a nice play. It was a nice strategy. I think Lifeline has just struggled with having too much game-breaking utility because she messes with healing, and not enough utility because, again, she messes with healing, so you can't just have a character who's so good at doing something that is the literal definition of either living and dying in this game, right? Like, if someone's just so good at living, it's going to be hard to kill them, and that is, going to give them a natural advantage beyond just gun skill at staying alive. So if you match gun skill, she's going to win. That's kind of always been her issue. Plus, she got a small hitbox. I'm sure she has a pretty good average or above average win rate, which is why she doesn't often get the significant changes anymore after the mini rework she's had. But for me, that's kind of where she goes. Let me know what you guys think. All right. Gibraltar, Gibby. Gibby is also kind of in this B section. We're moving a little bit up with these characters. I like the way that Gibby presents an option with shields and also a defensive option. One of the things that the winning team in EMEA said yesterday, this was Go Next, I was talking to Atenum, who was, talking about the impact Gibby had. And he said, we wanted to win games. And Gibby is a character that allows you to win games. When you look at that shield and you look at the position that they were in, if you go back and watch a little bit of that, it is almost impossible to think that a team is going to have pressure on them in that way because of what Gibby can do. He's the stereotypical classic throw a shield down, we're safe unless you traverse this wide open space, and we're going to have first shots on you because we kind of command this zone. We're untouchable until you get over here. And that is a dangerous proposition. It's like, putting yourself on one side of a lake of hungry crocodiles and going, hey, I mean, once you get over here, you can have an even fight, but you're going to have to get over here first. And I'm guessing that you're not going to be, I guess, fully yourself when you finally arrive on the other side of the bank, unless you get extremely lucky, especially when you have the defensive bombardment, still one of the best ultimates in the game. It's one of those things that is just so damaging. You're going to die if you're in it. You just cannot counter it except running away from it or not being there, or with a Watson. It's just a character that, yes, he's not flashy anymore. He doesn't have that stuff that just puts him over the edge. But he is still a very good character, very solid character. And to me, I think this character scales as you get to a higher level. I would say if you're playing ranked or you're casuals, unless you're a super defensive minded person, this is probably a character you'll lose more than you win with. That's why Gibraltar, with his big hitbox, has the 15% damage reduction and is a character that they've kind of tried to balance through some of the more, usually things you don't touch in a game, where it's like this person just takes less damage from bullets. Like this person does more damage to you from bullets. You don't touch those things typically, but because of Gibraltar's hitbox and the way that each character has a unique hitbox, which does change the ability to hit them with weapons, they had to find a way to kind of even that out. So still, to me, a character that scales well with skill and experience, not necessarily a character that you're going to run lobbies with, especially if you just start out and say, let me just go 1v3 as Gibraltar. It can happen, but not quite. All right, this is where it starts to get interesting, because for me, there's a version of me last week, as you guys saw, a lot of my videos were about Conduit, and they were about Keon talking about Conduit. They're about, does Conduit need a change? Does she need to get reworked like Lifeline? I had an opportunity to watch and cast this weekend, and the thing that struck me was no Conduits were played up until the very, I'd say, 9th or 10th game in EMEA. I believe it was the 10th game where phase 1 that NIP, actually, no, in North America, I think it was E-District. So it was either the 9th or the 10th game. I don't know if it was the winning game, but it was NIP who were practicing with Keon and Conduit, talking about how good it is. Keon said, I had said this last week. Raven said I had texted it last week or tweeted it last week. Still haven't found the tweet, but Raven said he had said, oh yeah, Conduit's the bomb. Keon said I did it a month earlier. People have been talking about it. Duplex on TSM was talking about it. Jim Burton on 100 Thieves was talking about it. They showed up. They played it. Guess what happened? They died off drop. They fought, didn't work. Now, I don't know whether that's Kurev, who was the player playing Conduit, not at the level of trust and confidence in how to maneuver with that character, because it was Keon on Furia who was saying this, who had subbed with the rest of NIP, Vayne and McLovin, and gotten the value out of Conduit in a scrim. So Kurev maybe had the idea, didn't have the practice. I don't know. But the other thing is that Conduit scales off of having her level 3 perk, which is a hindrance to a character being super viable. If you have to get to level 3, sometimes you're not able to. A character that's supposed to be good off drop, which she is, if she's not as good until she gets to level 3 late game, it's kind of like, well, aren't you supposed to be the starter character, but you're not really good at doing that till you're late game? I don't know. This is a little weird. We already told you that I've already talked about the ultimate, how I don't think it's really that effective in some ways. I think it's effective at doing its job once it's out, but I think it's very hard to utilize it in a moment you would want to, while you're trying to get it out, and it needs to be faster, deploy faster, things like that. I just think that Conduit definitely has potential. I would have put her at A before I saw the performance this weekend, but now I've dropped her back to B. I think we've done a good thing. I think I've shifted. I was at F, went up to A. Now I'm back at B. I'm a little bit more like, hold your horses. Like, let's wait and see on Conduit. Mirage. Okay, here's the thing. I've got no experience with Mirage. I have probably an hour of playtime on Mirage my entire life in Apex Legends. It's probably maybe a little bit more than that, but it's not that much more. I do not play this character. I do know, however, this is a character that people lean on a lot more often in high level play. I don't have much to say about Mirage. I will tell you that he is played more than all of these other characters when it comes down to 7, 8, 9. He just seems to be kind of a sticky pick for a few teams, and it works well. You have invisible reses. You've got I mean, how many clones are they going to add to the ultimate? I mean, my God, I mean, it's like 70. I mean, at this point, it's going to be 75 clones. Like, how many more clones? Hey, guys, by the way, patch 26, we're adding 6 more clones to Mirage's. I mean, God, like, damn. Like, how many, to me, it's never been my style. Mirage is a great starter legend, and he's a great legend in casual games, even as you're climbing up into ranked, and even in high level ranked. It's weird because there's something valuable about just getting the first shot on someone or just disappearing out of sight. Because when you're out of sight in FPS games moving really fast, oftentimes you're just out of mind. Like, people just have to deal with other things too. They can't just wait and watch and look for you all the time. And pro players know how to utilize that really, really well. Obviously, he's in the support class. It gives you that support, getting, more valuable reses. Now that the fact you can kind of craft beacons and banners, from your crafter, it's a little bit easier. Supports don't necessarily have that advantage anymore, but I do think that Mirage is still just a comfort pick for some characters. So that is our list from F to B. We're now getting into characters. Mostly, there's still a few. There's still an F. Okay, coming up. We're now getting into characters that are seen quite often in the ALGS. And we're going to go and start with Maggie. So Maggie is going to go into A. Now, she's a part of our assault class. And what you'll notice about some of the higher level characters, yes, there's a good mix of assault. There's a good mix of recon. There's a good mix of skirmisher. But a lot of the times, in terms of full priority, a lot of the characters that are gone right away, assault and skirmisher. I mean, those are just those two characters well beyond. Yes, there's the most characters in that lobby. So I mean, in those categories. However, they just dictate the tempo and the style of play so much more, it seems like, than only a few other supports. So it just becomes kind of what you go for. And maybe we're in a more aggressive meta. Maybe this isn't the meta that Gibby and Caustic and it's just like bunker down Watsons are really like how you got to do it. It seems like the identity of a team is much more around assaults and skirmishers right now. So getting yourself up to date with these characters is probably going to scale the highest for you as a player, and it's going to make the most sense when you see them at the ALGS. Now, Maggie is a character that it brings just value in aggressiveness. I really like Maggie. She also has a version of a rotation tool with her ultimate. Her ball, remember, also serves as a bit of a counter to Gibraltar. So if he ever gets into that position where he is kind of a threat, the Maggie ball destroys Gibraltar. It destroys, I believe it destroys Watson Pylon as well. It destroys Rampart walls. It destroys a lot of different things where characters who are maybe running into a position of like, we got some defense, but not as much as we'd like. Maggie can be, a very big deterrent to that. You also look at things like hiding behind a Newcastle wall. Well, that riot drill goes into the back of it, and that's a full counter. To shields, she does the thing that she should do, but she's never really prioritized because I think other legends just shine more. It's not really a fact with Maggie. I think she's a great character. She does what she does. Her passive to me is always a little weird because sometimes shotguns are meta, sometimes they're not. I don't know if I love characters with weapon-based passives, except for ballistic, because that's like a whole way to play a character. But if it's like you have to have an LMG or you have to have a shotgun, and this is then what you're going to get from it, to me, I think that limits kind of the character's value based on the patch very, very much so. And it can get lost in the sauce. Like you can nerf the Eva 8 having nothing to do with Maggie. And then suddenly, though, Maggie's paying the price because now you're not really running shotguns anymore, right? So I think that can be one of those things that to me has been a deterrent for this character. It's not usually been like, oh, dang, dude, Eva 8s are in, Mastiffs are in. Well, now let me run Maggie, right? So I feel like it only is like a neutral to a negative and not really much of a positive. And so that's why I would love that to passive to change. But I think Maggie's in a good spot. She's played game 6, game 5, game 6, game 7. She comes out in that. Not really a banned character, but a character that certainly is valuable. A character I think that probably teeters on must play, and I'm gonna because of the difference between Maggie and him, you could easily put Fuse in an S tier position. Um, because once bans start to happen, or even before bans start to happen, Fuse is a character that's played. Fuse obviously brings the assault class, but in terms of pressure, in terms of utility, in terms of being a comfort pick for a lot of these players at high level, Fuse is just one of those picks that you could really see, thriving in S. The only reason I'm not going to leave him there and I'm going to put him back in A with Maggie is because he's not a must play. You don't have to play Fuse, and he's not one of those characters that in the first 3 games is going to get banned. That would be very, very strange in EMEA and the Americas. However, in APAC South, Ash didn't get banned till Ash never got banned. 8 games, she never got banned. So I don't know what's going on. Sometimes regions have different takes on this. To me, I think Fuse sitting in A is great because the second that the must pick legends are out, Fuse comes in. So that to me is where Fuse lives. Maggie is kind of right there too, but she's below Fuse and yet she's above all these other characters, which is why I think A also works for her. But there's a little bit of a tier in A that hopefully I'm describing to you guys. Yeah, Fuse is just great at what he does. Delivers damage, super aggressive. Knuckle clusters are free pressure. Really good in final zones. Really good at creating and holding space for an assault class. Pairs well with other legends too. And so I think this is just one of those easy runs on. Hey, this is a character that has been meta for a long time. Has been in and out of dominant or just good. And people have a lot of hours on this character too. And I think that starts to help for a while. And it starts to hurt characters who might ever want to get in the meta as we go into this next one, which is Vantage. Vantage is an F, guys. Vantage is an F. I don't care if you love Vantage. I don't care if you need to play Vantage right now. I don't care if Vantage is your mom. Okay, I don't even care because at that point it's personal and you need to deal with your personal problems. All right, Vantage literally has not gotten played in the ALGS this split. She hasn't gotten played in recent memory in years since she's been released. There's never been a meta where Vantage is the go-to girl. She's never dominated ranked in a way where, God, I just can't deal with this character. It has been a constant identity crisis for this character. And just so you know, it's not just me who's saying this. It's you guys, right? Vantage has a 0.7% pick rate. With the max pick rate being 30%, guys, she is less, than like a percentage point of a pick rate. And she's going down. She's going down. Like she's even getting picked less than she normally is. That is scary to think about. This character to me needs a bit of a rework or a revival because to be honest, it's kind of like a Frankenstein. I'm not even sure she was ever alive. I love snipers. I love the kit. But, this is why I always say buff out the gate, be very strong, be dominant, and nerf into a balanced position. All these characters that are even in this mix right now have come out usually in a strong enough way. Revenant maybe being the example as well as Rampart, who haven't. But most of these other characters have been pretty strong on release, pretty valuable, and now have kind of gotten nerfed into still, being relevant. Vantage has never really hit that relevance. And this is a character that, guys, I need your help with. What do you think we should do with Vantage? I personally just am here to do the bat call for it and, pun intended on echo her bat. But I think she just needs a little bit more love. She's the kind of character to me that could do with like what Sparrow can do, or maybe she can hit recon beacons from range. I think that would even help. But to me, her mobility has always been a little bit clunky. Her repositioning with Echo, her bigger than normal hitbox, it's kind of just been unattractive to play to a lot of players because you don't get that sense of mobility that you feel like you would want to get from a character like that. And this game, as it's getting faster and faster, is getting harder and harder for slower characters who kind of want to perch and set up like that. Vantage was the idea you could perch and set up and like get to a location and double jump and be there and, get information on people. And, we have a faster game now. I think Apex is going in that direction. That's why for me, I think Conduit and Vantage are good candidates to kind of update their kits for where we're looking to send Apex in the future. That's my 2 cents on that. Crypto is pretty much he's about as close to an S tier character as you can get for a Recon legend. He is to me the most valuable Recon legend outside of Sparrow in the game. He brings the level of comfort as one of the oldest characters in the game, being able to grab banners and grab information on where maps are from the survey beacon and scan where scan rings and be able to see where teams are, get that information. I think it's survey, excuse me. And one of the things that I think is really important about getting that information is not risking to do it. That to me is the biggest deal. And having the ability for a character also, and let's just be honest, Fuse, one of the things Fuse can do is he can actually build into with his perks, scanning ring consoles, so he could see where the ring is. That's one of the reasons Fuse is also prioritized. I forgot to mention that, but if you play Fuse, you know that. But it is one of the reasons why we've seen Fuse be more valuable more consistently, just because he has that option, which kind of also gives you like, hey, maybe Vantage Conduit, maybe you can just scan rings. You know what I mean? Like give it, maybe there's something you can do that players will say, hey, that's valuable. We can do that because I wouldn't trade it for Fuse. But now that she can do what Fuse can do, maybe there is some range that I can, work with. Just a side note there. Crypto, his EMP is super valuable in late game. The information that the drone brings, being able to now have you and your teammates see the information from the drone, the pressure it could provide, and the information, the utility. Crypto is just a character that, we see the best of the best in the world continue to play. He's continued to have that impact, and I think he will, as long as his kit remains the same, which it will. However, very weird. Like for me, Crypto, not my favorite kit. Like he kind of goes in the same range as Mirage, where he's just not a character that I spend a lot of time on. I know, not everybody feels that way, but that's just the way I feel. You know what? I'm just curious. I want to make sure. Hold on, guys. Before we go crazy, I need to make sure right now that I have enough memory. The one thing I can't have right now. You know what? Hold on. Let me just check this right now. Hold on. Okay. I still got some memory. I was like, this video has gone too long. I can't have this. Stop, man. I'm recording an MP4. Okay. Hold on. All right. We'll speed this up anyways. We have been here for a while. Bangalore just brings so much value. Smokes, she's a great assault character. She's really comfortable for a lot of people. Mobile cover, great ultimate. These are the things that Bangalore's always brought, and a great passive, 33%. Movement speed, when you're getting even like shot close to, just makes Bangalore a really great pick. She's obviously an assault legend that a lot of people go for. Watson as well. In terms of controller legends, being able to see ring consoles, being able to hold down space. She's one of the few characters that actually counters Sparrow, and his value that he's brought to the table in this split. And since his release, she continues to be a threat in terms of holding down space, being one of the most consistent defensive legends in the game. She's got a small hitbox, and to me, she's just got just tremendous value, giving you shields, giving you protection, making you a home away from home, as long as you can find the opportunity to put that interception pylon down. We love Watson. She's been played so consistently, and that's definitely where she lands here. Pathfinder as well. When you talk about leaving out movement from some of the bigger characters who are playing this game and they're no longer available in bans, Pathfinder shows up right away and sweeps you off your feet. That zipline and the buffs that he's got ready to get his tack reset on some of his perks, coming back into the ability to have the energized zipline back onto his kit and take less damage when ziplining, and just the length and the mobility of getting to high ground. Characters that are being played right now in this meta, like I said, Horizon not really being played, still good, but not really being played, don't have as much access to high ground. Once your first few legends get banned that have complete access to anywhere on the map. And so Pathfinder, he brings that. He's a great individual character. He's one of the oldest characters in the game. He's been in championship games in the ALGS from 2019 in Poland, and he'll be in it all the way to 2025 and 2030, 2045, as long as this game is going and wherever we're actually, wherever we're casting. Timbuktu, who knows? ALGS Championships, Timbuktu, 2095. But he's definitely obviously going to be a great character, and he continues to be a solid pick when mobility is needed. And it's usually always needed, as well as the information that he can bring with his passives too. You look at Sparrow, and this is the man that came in with a new way to scan beacons. Sparrow's been a insight into Apex Legends, and he's been a fantastic one. A character that released on the stronger side, has not really gotten any significant nerfs yet, but totally has changed the way that you can now gain information, scanning those survey beacons and seeing where your rotation needs to land. By being able to hit his tracker dart and have an area of effect where if it's near where the survey beacon is, it'll scan the survey beacon for you, meaning you could scan it from miles away, and you can scan it from distance. You can hit trick shots to scan these survey beacons and not go there. And you can have a team sitting in that same place. You could still scan their beacon. It is a massive benefit. Not only does it give him Evo, it allows him and his teammates, especially if it's your IGL, your in-game leader on it, or just somebody who's playing this character to take advantage of it and giving the information to your in-game leader to navigate a final zone or moving into a zone when you're late to it perfectly, because you know exactly where the teams are in front of you and you know how to thread that needle to get to the building that you want to get to and have a shot to win the game. Sparrow also brings an incredible passive. He can wall climb and wall jump. He could double jump mid-air, and his ultimate is one of the best ultimates in the game. He could track enemies like Bloodhound essentially with his tracker dart and his Stinger Bolt. When you get it to level 3, whether you want to take 3 of them for more utility and more constant pressure, you want to take one that does damage and heals off the damage that it does, that can basically make this Sparrow invincible in a team fight. He is just so dang good. He's clearly a character. Not only does he doesn't have the must play in some ways, because not everyone is a major fan. You're not seeing Sparrow banned consistently in these games, but he is one of those characters that is honestly just, to me, oh my God, what a release. Like one of my favorite releases ever. All right, it's time to get into our must picks. And here we go with Catalyst. Catalyst is a must pick character in Apex Legends. One of the interesting things about Catalyst being a must pick character is that she has always kind of had this role in these last few metas of being such a stable choice when, you know, it feels like maybe you don't have other choices that you want, a la Gibby, who's kind of traditionally filled a defensive role, even Rampart before Catalyst was there, or Watson, who's filled a defensive role. Catalyst is the go-to controller for maps like Storm Point, maps like Broken Moon, because there's these wide open spaces, and how do you get across it, right? How do you navigate that? How do you hold down a building too? This character can give both of those things to you, and she's just honestly kept such a big value consistently, and you know, I really appreciate this character. This is one of those must picks, and she usually goes and pairs really well with Newcastle, who is also a must pick. There's a team, Gaming Gladiators. You guys probably know them. They were so successful in this meta. Newcastle and Catalyst together ran the meta for a very long time last year, and they continue to be one of those early picks, not just because of their efficacy as a duo, but just individually how good they are. The castle wall, the mobile shield, the res while having a shield. Newcastle has just gotten buffs to make him so valuable, and even though he's got a few nerfs, there's really no other character who could stabilize and stop an affront the way that he can. I'm super, super excited for him. And by the way, guys, I'm going to have to do something like speed this one up really, really fast, because I know I am running out of speed. But it's okay. You know what? I'm not gonna, you know what? No, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. Wraith is in a great spot. Ballistic also goes up there. Ashe, Alter. If you want to know it, Wraith is the best rotation ability character outside of these three. And let's just talk about this trio right here. Ballistic, Ashe, and Alter. There's really no character that moves the way that they do. Ballistic's Tempest and his change to that. He's gotten recently nerfed, but there's still no character who keeps the offense moving. The movement speed, the auto reloads, the ability to be aggressive. That is what Ballistic does. Ashe, her ultimate, her TP, it's one of the best movement abilities in the game. You cannot deny it. And now she's got her own jump as well to make her that much harder to kill. She's mobile, she's fun. And of course, the other character, Alter, who has just had a renaissance, whether it's the Void Nexus, resetting fights, which many people are upset about, going with her Void Passage and getting into places no other character can, or sieging places that they can't, from high ground to mobility to aggressiveness. These three are the best combo right now, and they are usually the first 3 bans in any high-level play. I hope you enjoyed this tier list. Let me know if you guys want to talk more about those last ones. Want to get the video done, but as always, leave a like. Remember to never give up, never stop gaming, and I'll see you all next time.